I was a Muslim for 30 years, but it took dying to discover the truth. These are the words of Asa Mahmud, a woman whose near-death experience challenged everything she thought she knew about her faith. Asa's journey from a peaceful life in Aspen to a harrowing encounter in the afterlife is a story that defies explanation. As she stood at the precipice between life and death, she witnessed scenes that would shake the foundations of her beliefs. What truth did Asa uncover, and why was she sent back to share it? Aspen, Colorado, with its pristine slopes and breathtaking mountain vistas, was the backdrop for Asa Mahmud's seemingly perfect life. A successful restaurateur and devoted mother of three, Asa had carved out a slice of paradise in this winter wonderland. Her days were filled with the bustle of managing her thriving Middle Eastern eatery and the joyous chaos of family life. But it was Asa's unwavering faith that truly defined her. Islam wasn't just a religion for her, it was the very essence of her being. 5 times a day, without fail, she would pause her busy schedule to answer the call to prayer. Her modest dress and hijab were not just cultural artifacts but proud symbols of her devotion. In a town where many chased material success, Asa found her richness in spiritual fulfillment. The fateful day began like any other ski trip for the Mahmud family. The crisp mountain air held the promise of fresh powder and exhilarating runs. Asa's husband, Karim, and their children, Idris, Amira, and little Fatima, were all geared up and eager to hit the slopes. As they rode the gondola to the summit, Asa gazed out at the snow-capped peaks, feeling a sense of peace and gratitude wash over her. At the top of the mountain, the family paused to take in the panoramic view. The sky was a brilliant blue, unmarred by clouds, and the sun glinted off the pristine snow. Asa felt a surge of excitement as she adjusted her goggles and prepared for the first run of the day. She had no way of knowing that this familiar ritual was about to take a devastating turn. As Asa glided down the slope, her movements fluid and confident, a subtle shift in the snow beneath her skis went unnoticed. The packed powder gave way to a patch of ice, hidden just beneath the surface. In a split second, Asa's world tilted on its axis. Her skis lost their grip, and she felt herself careening out of control. Time seemed to slow as Asa's body twisted in the air. The beautiful mountain scenery blurred into a whirl of white and blue. She was vaguely aware of voices shouting in alarm, but they seemed distant and muffled. The impact, when it came, was brutal and unforgiving. Asa's body slammed against the unforgiving mountainside, tumbling like a rag doll before coming to rest in a crumpled heap. In the eerie silence that followed, Asa lay motionless on the snow. The once pristine slope was now marred by the violent path of her fall. As fellow skiers rushed to her aid and her family's cries of distress pierced the air, the gravity of the situation became clear. Asa Mahmud, the pillar of faith and family, now teetered on the brink between life and death. As ski patrol arrived with their life-saving equipment, a race against time began. Asa's vital signs were fading fast, and the extent of her injuries was catastrophic. As she was carefully loaded onto a rescue sled, no one could have imagined the extraordinary journey that awaited her, a journey that would challenge everything she believed about life, death, and the nature of reality itself. The line between life and death is far more blurred than most of us realize. As paramedics fought to keep Asa's heart beating, she found herself in a state that defied conventional understanding. Clinically dead, yet more aware than ever before, Asa's consciousness seemed to float away from her battered body, leaving behind the chaos of the rescue effort. At first, confusion overwhelmed her. The world around her appeared distorted, as if viewed through a shimmering veil. She felt oddly detached, free from the pain that had moments ago consumed her entire being. As her awareness sharpened, Asa made a startling realization. She was hovering above the scene of her own accident, watching as ski patrol and medics worked frantically to save her life. The sight was surreal. Her broken form lay motionless on the snow, while her family looked on in horror. Asa wanted to reach out, to comfort them, but found herself unable to interact with the physical world. Below, the rescue team moved with practiced urgency. They carefully stabilized Asa's neck and spine, their voices tense as they called out vital signs. "BP's dropping fast," one paramedic shouted. "We're losing her." The gravity of the situation became crystal clear to Asa as she observed her own life slipping away. In those crucial moments, Asa stood at the threshold of clinical death. Her heart had stopped beating and her breath had ceased. Yet somehow her consciousness remained intact, even heightened. This phenomenon challenges our understanding of death and the nature of awareness. Many who have experienced similar states report a profound sense of clarity and expanded perception. As the paramedics fought to restart her heart, Asa felt a strange pull. The physical world began to fade, replaced by a sense of movement towards something beyond. A part of her yearned to stay, to return to her family and the life she knew. But the draw of this new realm was powerful, almost irresistible. In that moment of transition, suspended between life and death, Asa experienced a profound shift in her perception of reality. The beliefs that had defined her existence for so long seemed to fall away, leaving her open to possibilities she had never before considered. The last thing Asa heard from the physical world was the flat, continuous tone of the heart monitor. Her journey was about to take her far beyond the slopes of Aspen, into a realm that would challenge everything she thought she knew about faith, existence, and the nature of the divine. As Asa's consciousness drifted further from her earthly form, she found herself drawn into a darkness unlike anything she had ever experienced. This was not the comforting darkness of a peaceful night, but something far more profound and unsettling. Little did she know, this was merely the beginning of an otherworldly odyssey that would forever alter the course of her life and faith. Asa's journey into the darkness was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The Islamic teachings of the afterlife she had held dear for decades did nothing to prepare her for the terrifying reality that now enveloped her. As she descended deeper into the abyss, she began to question everything she thought she knew about death and judgment. The darkness that surrounded Asa was thick and oppressive, seeming to pulse with a malevolent energy. It was not the peaceful transition she had expected, but a descent into a realm that defied her understanding. As her senses adjusted, Asa became aware of distant sounds that sent chills through her being. Agonized wails and desperate pleas echoed from unseen sources. The air around her grew heavy and acrid, filled with the unmistakable scent of sulfur and burning flesh. This hellish atmosphere was a stark contrast to the paradise she'd been promised for her faithful devotion. Asa's mind reeled as she tried to reconcile her current experience with the beliefs she had held so dear. As she moved through this dark realm, Asa began to perceive shadowy figures in the distance. Their forms were twisted and grotesque, unlike anything she had seen in her earthly life. These entities seemed to writhe in eternal torment, their suffering palpable even from afar. The sight filled Asa with a deep, primal fear that shook her to her core. The landscape itself seemed to shift and change, defying the laws of physics she had known in life. Jagged rocks and treacherous chasms appeared and disappeared, creating a sense of instability and constant danger. Asa felt as if the very ground beneath her was alive and hostile, seeking to draw her deeper into its nightmarish embrace. As she struggled to make sense of her surroundings, Asa's thoughts turned to her faith. Where was the merciful Allah she had worshipped? Where were the angels who were supposed to guide the faithful to their eternal reward? The absence of these comforting elements of her belief system only added to her growing sense of dread and confusion. Suddenly, Asa sensed a presence approaching, a figure that seemed different from the tortured soul she had glimpsed earlier. As it drew nearer, she felt a mix of hope and apprehension. Could this be a guide, come to lead her out of this hellish place? Or was it something far more sinister? The figure began to take shape, emerging from the shadows with an air of authority and familiarity. Asa's heart raced as she recognized features she had seen depicted in countless paintings and descriptions throughout her life. Could it be? Was this the Prophet Muhammad, come to guide her in the afterlife? As the figure drew closer, Asa felt a wave of relief wash over her. Finally, here was someone she could trust, someone who could explain the terrors she had witnessed and guide her to the paradise she had been promised. But as she looked into the figure's eyes, a chill ran down her spine. Something was terribly wrong, and Asa's journey was about to take an even more shocking turn. Relief flooded through Asa as she gazed upon the familiar figure before her. Here, at last, was the Prophet Muhammad, come to guide her through this terrifying realm. Surely now, she thought, she would find the answers and comfort she so desperately sought. But as the being drew nearer, an unsettling feeling crept into her consciousness. The figure's eyes held a darkness that seemed to contradict everything Asa had been taught about the mercy and compassion of Islam's final prophet. His presence, rather than bringing peace, seemed to intensify the oppressive atmosphere around them. Asa's initial relief gave way to a growing sense of unease as she struggled to reconcile this encounter with her lifelong beliefs. "I am who you believe me to be," the figure declared, his voice carrying a mocking tone that sent chills down Asa's spine. "I am the one who led millions astray, and you, Aisha, followed me so faithfully." The use of her name, spoken with such disdain, shook Asa to her core. This was not the benevolent guide she had expected. As the conversation unfolded, the figure systematically dismantled the pillars of faith Asa had built her life upon. He sneered at her devotion, revealing that her good works and prayers were worthless because it was built on a lie. Each word struck Asa like a physical blow, challenging the very foundation of her existence. The being's revelations grew more horrifying with each passing moment. "You never knew Allah," he taunted, "because you followed a false god." This statement, so contrary to the Islamic teaching of Tawheed, the oneness of God, left Asa reeling. How could this be the prophet she had revered her entire life? As the full weight of the deception settled upon her, Asa felt her world crumbling around her. The realization that everything she believed might be a lie was almost too much to bear. "I never imagined that everything I believed would be challenged in such a profound way," she thought, her mind struggling to process the implications of this encounter. The figure's true nature became increasingly apparent as he reveled in Asa's distress. This was no prophet of mercy, but a demon delighting in the destruction of her faith. The mask of Muhammad fell away, revealing a malevolent entity that had led countless souls astray. As the demon's laughter echoed through the darkness, Asa found herself plunged into a crisis of faith unlike anything she had ever experienced. The certainties that had anchored her life now seemed like shifting sand beneath her feet. In this moment of profound despair, Asa felt utterly lost, adrift in a sea of doubt and fear. Little did she know this shattering of her worldview was just the beginning. As Asa grappled with the enormity of this revelation, she remained unaware that her journey through this realm of darkness was far from over. A new presence was about to make itself known, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about faith, redemption, and the true nature of the divine. In the wake of her encounter with the false prophet, Asa found herself grappling with a truth so profound and devastating that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of her existence. The realization that her entire worldview was built on falsehood crashed over her like a tidal wave, leaving her gasping for breath in a sea of uncertainty. As she stood there, shaken to her core, Asa's eyes were suddenly opened to the fate of other Muslims in this realm. All around her, souls writhed in anguish, their cries of despair echoing through the darkness. These were not just strangers, but people she recognized, friends, family members, respected community leaders. All of them had fallen victim to the same deception that had ensnared her. Guilt and betrayal washed over Asa in waves. Every prayer she had ever uttered, every fast she had observed, every pilgrimage she had made, all of it now seemed like a cruel mockery. She reflected on her past with newfound clarity, her voice barely a whisper as she recalled every lie I'd ever told, every harsh word, every selfish thought, all of it paraded through my mind with crystal clarity. The weight of this revelation was almost too much to bear. Asa fell to her knees, confusion and terror overwhelming her. The practices she had once held sacred now appeared in a sinister new light. The call to prayer that had structured her days now seemed like a siren's song, luring the faithful to their doom. The modest dress she had worn with pride now felt like the uniform of a deceived army. As Asa's understanding of her situation deepened, a sense of urgency began to take root. If everything she had believed was a lie, what awaited the millions who still clung to those same falsehoods? The answer chilled her to the bone. She knew then that if she ever returned to the world of the living, she had a responsibility to share this truth, no matter the cost. In the depths of her despair, a flicker of something new began to stir within Asa. It wasn't hope, not yet, but a growing determination. She realized that her journey through this dark realm might have a purpose beyond her own salvation. "Your testimony will be powerful," a voice seemed to whisper, "exactly because you were so wrong." As this new understanding settled over her, Asa sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The oppressive darkness seemed to recede slightly, and a new presence made itself known. It was different from anything she had encountered in this realm. Neither the twisted souls of the damned nor the deceptive figure of the false prophet. This presence radiated something Asa had almost forgotten existed in this place of torment: love and truth. As the presence of love and truth grew stronger, Asa found herself face to face with a figure she had never truly known. How could someone she had dismissed as merely a prophet now appear as the embodiment of divine power? The answer would shatter everything she thought she understood about her faith. A radiant light pierced the oppressive darkness, and Asa shielded her eyes from its intensity. As her vision adjusted, she beheld a sight that defied her lifelong beliefs. Before her stood Jesus Christ, not as the respected prophet of Islam, but as a being of overwhelming power and authority. His presence was unlike anything Asa had ever experienced, radiating a love so pure and a truth so absolute that it made even the darkness of hell retreat. Confusion and disbelief warred within Asa's mind. This Jesus was nothing like the figure she had learned about in her Islamic teachings. The contrast between him and the deceptive entity she had encountered earlier was stark and undeniable. Where the false prophet had exuded malevolence and mockery, Jesus emanated compassion and grace. Asa found herself falling prostrate before him, overwhelmed by his holiness. The magnitude of her past mistakes crashed over her, and she felt utterly exposed in his presence. Every lie, every harsh word, every selfish thought paraded through her mind with crystal clarity. Yet, instead of condemnation, she felt an inexplicable sense of acceptance and love. As Jesus spoke, his words resonated with a power that shook Asa to her core. He revealed truths about himself that challenged everything she had believed. The Trinity, which she had always dismissed as a Christian fallacy, suddenly made sense in a way that transcended human understanding. The necessity of Christ's sacrifice for salvation, once regarded as unnecessary in her Islamic worldview, now appeared as the ultimate expression of divine love. With each revelation, Asa's perception of reality shifted. She began to understand that her near-death experience was not just for her own benefit, but for the sake of others, still trapped in deception. Jesus offered her a chance at redemption, emphasizing that it was not too late, despite her previous beliefs and actions. As Asa listened, filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation, Jesus delivered a message that would forever alter the course of her life. He instructed her to return to the world of the living, to share her testimony with those who were still ensnared by falsehood. The weight of this divine commission settled upon her, a responsibility both terrifying and exhilarating. In that moment, suspended between heaven and hell, Asa faced a decision that would determine not only her eternal fate, but potentially that of countless others. As she prepared to return to her earthly body, she knew that nothing would ever be the same. The truth she had uncovered in death would now become her mission in life, no matter the cost. Asa's eyes fluttered open, and the stark hospital lights assaulted her senses. But the physical discomfort paled in comparison to the weight of the secret she now carried. Would sharing her encounter with Jesus bring enlightenment to her loved ones or tear her world apart? The journey back to consciousness was excruciating. Asa felt as if her spirit was being forced into a suit of wet concrete, every movement a struggle against the limitations of her mortal form. The freedom she had experienced in the spiritual realm made her physical body feel like a prison. As she gasped her first breath, the magnitude of what she had witnessed crashed over her like a tidal wave. Asa's family surrounded her bedside, their faces etched with worry and relief. Karim, her husband, clasped her hand tightly, his eyes brimming with tears. Their children hovered nearby, unsure and frightened. The medical staff buzzed around her, checking vitals and adjusting equipment, but Asa barely registered their presence. Her mind was consumed by the profound truths she had uncovered in death. As the days passed, Asa grappled with an inner turmoil that threatened to overwhelm her. Every aspect of her life now seemed foreign and hollow. The call to prayer that once structured her days now felt like a mockery. The modest dress she had worn with pride now seemed like the uniform of a deceived army. How could she continue to live as if nothing had changed when everything had been irrevocably altered? The pressure to keep her experience secret weighed heavily on Asa. She knew that sharing what she had witnessed would shatter the foundations of her family and community. Yet the truth burned within her, demanding to be spoken. Asa found herself withdrawn and distracted, her thoughts constantly returning to the realm beyond and the divine commission she had received. As Asa's physical recovery progressed, the emotional toll of her secret became unbearable. She knew she could no longer remain silent. The truth she had uncovered was too important, too vital to keep hidden. With trembling hands and a racing heart, Asa made the decision to share her story, knowing it would forever alter the course of her life and the lives of those around her. The moment of revelation came unexpectedly. Sitting in her hospital room with Karim, Asa felt a sudden surge of courage. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. As she recounted her journey through the afterlife, her encounter with the false prophet, and her transformative meeting with Jesus, Asa watched the shock and disbelief play across her husband's face. Karim's reaction was a mixture of concern and confusion. He struggled to reconcile the woman he had known for decades with this new, transformed version of his wife. As Asa's words hung in the air between them, she realized that this was only the beginning. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, misunderstandings, and potential rejection. but the truth she had witnessed demanded to be shared, no matter the cost. As Asa's revelation rippled through her family, it exposed fault lines no one knew existed. The once harmonious Muslim household now teetered on the brink of division, each member grappling with the implications of Asa's extraordinary claim. Asa had clung to the hope that her loved ones would embrace her newfound faith, or at least try to understand. But as she shared her experience with Jesus and her rejection of Islam, she watched their faces contort with a myriad of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and fear. Karim, her husband of 3 decades, oscillated between concern for her mental well-being and righteous indignation. "How can you turn your back on everything we've built our life around?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of pain and fury. "This isn't just about you, Asa. You're putting our entire family at risk." Their eldest daughter, Amira, reacted with outright hostility. A devout Muslim herself, she saw her mother's conversion as a betrayal of the highest order. "You've abandoned Allah for a false god," she spat, her words dripping with venom. "Do you have any idea what this means? You're an apostate now. You're no longer my mother." Little Fatima, too young to fully grasp the situation, sensed the tension and withdrew into herself, her wide eyes darting between family members as arguments erupted around her. The cultural and religious context of apostasy in Islam hung over the family like a dark cloud. Asa knew the gravity of her decision. In many Muslim communities, leaving the faith was considered a crime punishable by death. Even in their relatively progressive circle in Aspen, the social consequences could be severe. As days turned into weeks, the Mahmud household became a battleground of emotional pleas and desperate interventions. Religious leaders were brought in to counsel Asa, to remind her of the beauty of Islam and the dangers of straying from the path. Family members took turns trying to reason with her, their approaches ranging from gentle persuasion to outright threats of disownment. Asa stood firm in her conviction, even as the weight of potential loss pressed down upon her. She knew that sharing her truth might cost her everything, but the alternative, living a lie, was no longer an option. Amidst the chaos, a small but significant shift occurred. Idris, Asa's teenage son, began to ask questions that went beyond mere curiosity. "Mom," he whispered one night away from the others, "what exactly did you see? What made you so sure?" His eyes held a glimmer of something Asa recognized: the first stirrings of doubt, the willingness to consider possibilities beyond the familiar. As Asa carefully shared more details with Idris, she felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Could her son be the bridge between her old life and the new? Or would this spark of questioning be quickly stamped out by the pressures of family and community? Little did Asa know, the ripples of her revelation were about to extend far beyond the confines of her home. As whispers of her apostasy began to spread through their tight-knit Muslim community, a storm of persecution loomed on the horizon, threatening to engulf not just Asa, but her entire family. As news of Asa's conversion spread through the community, the once welcoming streets of her neighborhood became a gauntlet of hostility. The true test of her faith was yet to come, as her former friends and spiritual leaders grappled with what they saw as a dangerous heresy. Asa's initial attempts to reason with community leaders were met with a mix of disbelief and barely concealed anger. The imam of her local mosque, a man she had once respected deeply, now regarded her with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You have strayed from the true path," he told her, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Allah may yet forgive you if you repent and return to Islam." But Asa knew she could not deny the truth she had experienced. As she stood firm in her newfound faith, the community's response escalated from whispered disapproval to open hostility. The first incident came as a shock. A brick thrown through the window of her restaurant, shattering glass and the illusion of safety. A note attached bore a chilling message: "Apostates have no place here. The vandalism was only the beginning. Asa found herself shunned by those who had once embraced her. Longtime customers avoided her restaurant, crossing the street when they saw her approaching. Her children faced bullying at school, taunted for their mother's betrayal of their faith. One evening, as Asa closed up her restaurant, she was confronted by a group of men from the mosque. Their eyes blazed with righteous anger as they quoted hadith about the fate of apostates. "Those who leave Islam must be put to death," one of them growled, his hand clenched into a fist. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. As the persecution intensified, Asa found herself grappling with a profound sense of isolation. The community that had once been her support system now viewed her as a threat to be eliminated. She knew the dangers faced by ex-Muslims, having heard stories of those who had been attacked or had their property damaged after leaving Islam. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming opposition, Asa felt a strength she had never known before. The truth she had witnessed in her near-death experience burned within her, a flame that could not be extinguished by threats or violence. She knew that her story had the power to challenge deeply held beliefs and offer hope to others who might be questioning their faith. As Asa stood in her vandalized restaurant, surveying the damage, she made a decision. She would not be silenced. She would continue to share her story, no matter the cost. Little did she know, her unwavering conviction was about to attract unexpected allies, people who would stand with her in the face of persecution and help her message reach even further than she had ever imagined. Asa's unwavering conviction was about to spark a hidden revolution. In the shadows of a society that demanded conformity, a network of questioning souls began to form. What would happen when these seeds of doubt took root? Despite the persecution she faced, Asa's testimony had begun to resonate with others in her community. Whispers of her experience spread through hushed conversations and furtive glances. Soon, individuals who harbored secret doubts about their faith started reaching out to her, drawn by the courage of her conversion. Recognizing the need for a safe space, Asa carefully established a support group for questioning Muslims. The meetings were held in utmost secrecy, often under the guise of book clubs or cooking classes. In these clandestine gatherings, attendees shared their struggles, fears, and hopes. Asa listened to their stories, offering comfort and understanding that came from her own journey. One woman, tears streaming down her face, confessed her growing disillusionment with Islam. "I've always had questions," she whispered, "but I was too afraid to voice them." Another man spoke of vivid dreams that challenged his beliefs, leaving him confused and seeking answers. Each story was unique, yet bound by a common thread of yearning for truth. The challenges faced by these potential converts were immense. Many feared the loss of family, friends, and their entire support system. The threat of ostracism and violence loomed large, making every step towards a new faith fraught with danger. Asa understood their fears all too well, having experienced the harsh consequences of her own conversion. As the group grew, so did the risks. Asa constantly balanced the need for secrecy with the desire to reach more people. She implemented careful screening processes and used coded language to protect the identities of those involved. Despite these precautions, the fear of discovery was ever present. Amidst this atmosphere of tension and hope, Asa's son, Idris, continued to ask probing questions. His curiosity about his mother's experience had blossomed into a genuine search for truth. Asa watched with a mixture of joy and trepidation as Idris delved deeper into the teachings of Christianity, comparing them with the Islamic beliefs he had grown up with. The breakthrough came on a quiet evening when Idris approached Asa with tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think I understand now. I want to follow Jesus too." Asa's heart soared with joy, even as she recognized the challenges that lay ahead for her son. As Idris embarked on his own journey of faith, Asa marveled at the ripple effect of her testimony. What had begun as a personal revelation was now touching lives far beyond her immediate circle. Little did she know, her small support group was about to evolve into something much larger, a beacon of hope for those seeking truth in the face of overwhelming opposition. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through Aisha's cafe, but it wasn't just food that nourished the patrons. Between the tables and chairs, a secret mission was unfolding. What was really on the menu at this unassuming restaurant? Asa Mahmud's near-death experience had transformed her life, and now she sought to extend that transformation to others. Her restaurant, once a simple eatery, became the unlikely epicenter of a quiet, spiritual revolution. The idea came to her gradually as she observed the diverse clientele that frequented her establishment. What if she could create a haven for those questioning their faith, right under the noses of the community that had turned against her? The challenges were immense. Asa knew that one wrong move could not only destroy her business, but put her life and the lives of those she sought to help in danger. She had to strike a delicate balance between openness and discretion, creating an atmosphere that welcomed seekers without raising suspicions. Subtle changes began to appear in Aisha's cafe. Inspirational quotes about truth and spiritual journeys found their way onto the walls, carefully chosen to resonate with questioning Muslims without alarming others. Asa trained her staff to be attentive to certain signs: a hesitant question, a lingering gaze at the quotes, a book of comparative religion peeking out of a bag. These were the silent cries for help that Asa had learned to recognize. Every table at Aisha's cafe now had a Bible discreetly available, tucked away, but accessible to those who sought it. Asa and her trusted employees were always ready to engage in deeper conversations with those who showed interest, offering words of encouragement and support. The impact of this covert ministry was profound. A young woman, struggling with doubts about her faith, found solace in the welcoming atmosphere of the cafe. Over time, through conversations with Asa and exposure to new ideas, she found the courage to explore a different spiritual path. A middle-aged man, burdened by years of religious guilt, discovered a message of grace and forgiveness that transformed his outlook on life. As word spread in hushed whispers, Aisha's cafe became known as a safe haven for seekers and converts. But with increased attention came increased risk. One evening, as Asa was closing up, she noticed a group of men from the local mosque watching the cafe intently. Her heart raced as she realized they might be catching on to her activities. Just as tension reached its peak, a regular customer, one whose life had been changed through Asa's ministry, approached the group. He engaged them in conversation, skillfully diverting their attention and suspicions. As the potential confrontation dissipated, Asa breathed a sigh of relief, recognizing both the danger and the importance of her mission. This close call only reinforced Asa's commitment to her new purpose. She knew that the risks were great, but the potential to change lives and offer hope to those trapped in spiritual darkness was greater still. As she locked up that night, Asa realized that her little restaurant had become more than just a business. It was a beacon of light in a world of shadows, and its influence was only beginning to grow. As Asa's testimony began to spread beyond her local community, the power of her story took on a life of its own. What started as whispers among friends and family soon evolved into a digital wildfire, igniting curiosity and challenging long-held beliefs across the globe. Social media platforms became unexpected allies in Asa's mission, with her account of meeting Jesus during a near-death experience resonating with people far beyond the confines of her small town. The online world opened up new avenues for Asa to share her message, but it also exposed her to a wider array of threats and criticisms. Each post, each shared video, was a double-edged sword. While it reached those hungry for spiritual truth, it also caught the attention of those who saw Asa's conversion as a dangerous apostasy. She found herself navigating a precarious balance between visibility and safety, never quite sure who might be watching or how they might react. Determined to provide support for others on similar journeys, Asa worked tirelessly to create online resources. She developed a website that offered information about her experience, answers to common questions, and a safe space for dialogue. A private forum allowed questioning Muslims to discuss their doubts and fears anonymously, free from the threat of persecution. These digital sanctuaries became lifelines for many who felt trapped by their faith but feared the consequences of leaving. The impact of Asa's testimony reached far beyond her expectations. She received messages from Muslims in countries where apostasy was punishable by death, thanking her for giving them hope and courage. A young woman in Saudi Arabia wrote about how Asa's story had given her the strength to question her beliefs for the first time. A man in Iran shared how he had secretly converted after watching one of Asa's online testimonies, risking everything for what he now believed to be true. As Asa's influence grew, so did the opportunities to share her message on a larger scale. Invitations to speak at conferences and events began to pour in, each one presenting both an exciting chance to reach more people and a potential security risk. The anticipation built as Asa prepared for her largest public appearance yet, a speaking engagement at an international conference on religious freedom. The day of the conference arrived, and Asa found herself standing before an audience of thousands. As she shared her journey from devout Muslim to follower of Christ, a hush fell over the crowd. Her words, born from personal experience and unwavering conviction, touched hearts and challenged minds. In that moment, as she looked out over the sea of faces, Asa realized the true extent of her mission's impact. Yet even as Asa basked in the knowledge that her story was changing lives, she was acutely aware of the personal cost of her mission. The threat of violence loomed ever present, and the rift with her family remained a constant source of pain. As she stepped off the stage, Asa knew that her journey was far from over. The ripples of truth she had set in motion would continue to spread, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. In the quiet stillness of her restaurant after closing, Asa Mahmud found herself in a moment of deep reflection. The echoes of the day's conversations faded, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the weight of her journey. As she wiped down the last table, her gaze lingered on a family photo tucked away in the corner, a reminder of what once was and what she had sacrificed for her newfound faith. The cost of her conversion had been steep. Asa's mind wandered to her estranged family members, their faces etched in her memory with a mixture of love and pain. Her daughter Amira's words of rejection still stung, a constant reminder of the divide her faith had created. Karim, her husband of 3 decades, now lived as a stranger under the same roof, their once vibrant relationship reduced to tense silences and averted gazes. Asa's heart ached with a profound sense of loss. The community that had once embraced her now shunned her presence, treating her as an outcast. Friends who had shared meals at her table now crossed the street to avoid her. The isolation was at times overwhelming, a stark contrast to the close-knit Muslim community she had left behind. Yet, as Asa reflected on these losses, she felt an undercurrent of peace that defied logic. The truth she had encountered in her near-death experience burned brighter than the pain of rejection. She recalled the words of Jesus about the cost of discipleship, how following him might mean losing family and friends for his sake. The reality of those teachings had become her lived experience. Asa's thoughts turned to the lives that had been changed through her testimony, The secret gatherings of questioning Muslims, the online messages from seekers in far-off lands, the quiet conversations over cups of coffee in her restaurant, each one a testament to the power of her story. She realized that her personal losses had become gains for others, seeds of hope planted in fertile soil. As she locked up the restaurant, a notification on her phone caught her attention. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw the sender's name, Fatima, her youngest daughter. With trembling fingers, Asa opened the message, bracing herself for another rejection. Instead, she found words that made her breath catch in her throat. "Mom, I think I'm ready to talk. Can we meet?" This unexpected olive branch from Fatima ignited a spark of hope in Asa's heart. Could this be the beginning of reconciliation? As she walked home under the starlit sky, Asa allowed herself to imagine a future where her family might come to understand her journey, even if they didn't share her faith. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Asa felt a glimmer of optimism about what lay beyond the horizon. Asa Mahmud's near-death experience shattered the foundations of her faith and ignited a spiritual revolution. Her journey from devout Muslim to follower of Christ transformed not only her life, but the lives of countless others seeking truth. As her testimony spread, it became a beacon of hope for those questioning their beliefs, challenging long-held convictions, and offering a glimpse into the mysteries beyond our mortal existence. The ripples of Asa's revelation continue to expand, touching lives across the globe. Her restaurant, once a simple eatery, now serves as a sanctuary for spiritual seekers. Online communities flourish, providing support and resources for those navigating the treacherous waters of religious doubt. With each person reached, each life changed, Asa's mission grows stronger, defying persecution and skepticism. As we reflect on Asa's extraordinary odyssey, we are left to ponder, what is the true nature of faith? How far would we go in pursuit of truth, even if it meant losing everything we once held dear? Asa's story challenges us to examine our own beliefs, to question the unquestionable, and to find the courage to seek truth no matter the cost.